giving my classification speech. I'm a charter member of the club, so I think it was in '94 that I gave my first classification. When I left the club a few years back and moved to Edmonton, I gave a classification speech to the Avenue of Nations Rotary Club. And now coming back, third time, so third time lucky. So if you're expecting something really good, we'll see how it goes. As I recall, just stepping back, as I recall those presentations, two of them stood out that I remember pretty clearly. One of them was Bob Marston's. The speech was fine and everything, but we had agreed beforehand to all grab a chair and sit right in front of Bob. So just as he was getting up and talking, we all sat directly in front of him. Bob didn't seem too fazed by it. He just went on with his speech. The second one, and it's by a long-time Rotarian, and he isn't here today, but he's generally one of the more quiet Rotarians, more laid back and soft-spoken. But Don Bay gave an incredible speech, and I'll remember that as one of the highlights. Very well written, very humorous, and very well presented. Okay, contrary to popular belief, I was born on this planet, and I was born in Calgary on June 28th, 1960. So it's really easy to calculate how old I am. Today I'm 52. I have two sisters, Veronica, who is a year younger than myself, Gail, who's two years younger, and a brother, Chris, who's 10 years younger. He's infamous for his Facebook posts, so if you are my Facebook friend or his, you'll appreciate his twisted sense of humor. As children, at least my two sisters and myself, we moved around a lot in our first 5 years of our lives. My dad was with the Royal Bank of Canada. He was part of a team that's actually set up new branches. So he was being moved around wherever he was needed. So I was born in Calgary, my sister Veronica in Edmonton, my sister Gail in Cardston. We moved to Toronto, and then back to Edmonton, and then up to Spirit River, where my brother Chris was born. My father quit the Royal Bank because being a manager back then meant you were moving every 12 to 18 months. He became a manager in a little town, Blackie, where I attended my first year of school. When we moved to Spirit River, he decided to quit the bank as moving around like that wasn't all that great for a young family. He started his own business. So my first year was in Blackie, and then from grade 2 to grade 10, I attended a school in Spirit River. Then we moved to the Stony Plain area, and I went through high school at Memorial Composite. So I'm a Memorial Composite High School graduate. In addition to my brothers and sisters, my mother is still alive. She will celebrate her 80th birthday next year. She lives in Stony Plain. And I have 3 nephews, which I spoil every chance I get and spend as much time as I can with them. Kenyon, who's 19, and Finn, who's 16, and Sheridan, who's 13. So they're growing up quickly. In February of 2012, some of you will know that I got married. I married Elena Afonska. It's okay. Is that her calling? Elena has a daughter, Lisa, who is 19 years old, excuse me. And you'll have to excuse me, but Lisa was here in the summer, but with all of the things we were doing, I wasn't able to get her to a meeting, but she'll be back. Initially, I think she was a little cautious about Canada. She has strong ties, and you can appreciate being 19. She has strong ties to her friends, but over time, she developed a fondness for Edmonton and Canada in general. We did a fair bit of travel. They are both back in the Ukraine, waiting for the immigration status to go through. Lisa will probably likely finish her third year of university in Mariupol, but Elena is anxious to come back as soon as she can. They're from a city in the Ukraine called Mariupol. Mariupol is on the southeast corner of the Ukraine, and it borders a small sea called the Azov Sea, or Azovsky Sea, Azovsky as they call it. The sea is only famous for its depth. It's one of the shallowest seas in the world. And it is also tied to the Black Sea, so it's directly east of the Black Sea. So parts of the Ukraine extend into the Black Sea and are not really that far from Turkey, just across the sea. It's not very far. I think our impression of the Ukraine is often that it's in a colder climate, but it's quite a bit farther south than Edmonton is. The politics in the Ukraine, I've been there several times, so got to know the country and get a feel for it. The politics are difficult, as the country is filled with corruption. The government is corrupt, the police are corrupt, and in order to survive, there has to be this sort of thread of dealing with corruption on an ongoing basis, so it's difficult. It's split in two parts, one being the Russian side, which is on the east, which the people predominantly speak Russian, and their heritage is from Russia. They were moved there by Stalin. The left part, or the west part of the Ukraine, is predominantly Ukrainian-speaking, made up of various heritages. So the country right now is leaning to the Soviet side with a Soviet leading leadership. I've told a few Rotarians in the past that if you were to go 5 minutes outside Spruce Grove and be picked up and put in the Ukraine in their farmland, you would find very little difference. The vegetation, the land, that kind of thing is very similar, but that's where the similarity ends. It's amazing to me that that country can't move ahead. It should be far more stronger than it is. It has a strong industrial base on the east part of the country, which was generally started up by the Russian government. Following high school, I started to work with my father, who had started a business in Stony Plain, an accounting firm. And so that's where I started my accounting education. The education for accounting would continue. I attended the CGA program at Grant MacEwan, and also took some computer courses. I taught my father in 1978 to buy one of the first Radio Shack Model 2 desktop computers that were available in Western Canada. That computer cost, I think, $6,400. That was the start of a revolution for accounting. It had a piece of accounting software that really wasn't all that bad. And so that was my initiation into computers. I focused on programming, understanding operating systems, and that kind of thing. Eventually, the Radio Shack computers were phased out when IBM became the leader. I know there is a Model 2 in the Smithsonian, but you can understand that this is only a couple of years after Bill Gates was in '76 when he was involved in developing the operating systems in the PC. I'll talk a little bit more about concerning classification in a second. So I'll move back to accounting. But I currently live in Edmonton, and I enjoy the city. I enjoy coming back to the town, but I do prefer the city life to the town. It's just something about me that likes living in the city. Most of you know that music has played a strong role in my life, to a large degree because my father was a musician, very accomplished musician. Played piano, organ, accordion, played accordion well enough to play on the radio in the 50s, played trombone, violin, and later in his life became a band director. So as part of that, he started a band in Spirit River. He followed up a band in Fairview, existed, but their leader had left, so he took over that band, and then eventually started a third band in Eaglesham. Now, I started playing drums when I was 8. We did take some piano lessons from him at the ages of 3 and 4, but I started playing drums when I was 8. And I have some fond memories of playing in Remembrance Day ceremonies where we marched. And Remembrance Day up north can be often quite cold. And so it was just myself and my dad just doing a drum thing, because most band instruments froze up. They freeze up out in the cold because you're blowing moist air into them. I also remember going up to Fort Vermilion, and that's way up north in northern Alberta, during a winter festival, and the whole band, the entire band went, and we marched, and of course the same thing happened. The band, all the instruments froze up, and just myself and the bass drummer at the time played. But we eventually went back to the school, and the instruments warmed up, and away we went. Because I didn't play drums in all 3 bands, that would have been rather boring. I started to dabble in other instruments, so I played a little bit of horn, trombone, clarinet. I've dabbled in all sorts of instruments, but always came back to drums. It was always my focus, probably the last instrument that my dad wanted me to play, but he was always supportive in playing drums. The last part of my high school years, I played in a trio with my father. We played weddings, parties, New Year's Eve, that kind of thing. I also began to teach music. I taught drums for 4 years while I was still in high school at the local Spruce Grove music store, Miradon Music. And that's where I met a very good friend and fellow musician of mine, Dan Schmulin. Dan used to teach here in Spruce Grove. He used to have a very successful guitar school. He later moved to Nanaimo, and where he teaches half of his classes online and half with local students, and is very successful. I played in several bands after getting out of high school, at various projects and bands, and so music's always been a part of my life. During that time, I also became a recording engineer. Learned recording, and still recording when we were using the tape machines. Had a recording studio out in my home when we lived on an acreage in Sandhills. So I got to help out quite a few young bands that were looking for help as far as their first recordings. So I got to meet and help out a lot of young musicians. Just carrying on with the music theme for a second. When I decided to sell my accounting firm, I guess I missed mentioning that I'd taken over the accounting firm when my dad passed away when I was 28. Took it over, my 2 sisters were involved in the firm. We built up the company, moved it to Main Street, and 14 years ago sold it to Mark Dashkovich, who has Dash Accounting. When I sold it, I made a decision that I wanted to pursue music, and I had a plan for 5 years that would be my pursuit. And we had a very good band. It was called Cohen, but at the end of the 5 years, we weren't where I wanted to be, and I decided that was going to be it for that particular band and that pursuit. I don't in any way regret doing that. Part of what I do now started back then. I was building websites, and that's what that initiated. I learned quite a bit of marketing when I was with the band, and again, that flows into what I do now. The other major part of my life has been sports, and it's one of the reasons that I was able to enjoy school as much as I did, band and sports. So I participated in all sports. Today that's difficult because the caliber of play is much higher, and most athletes in school are focusing on one particular sport, or maybe a couple. But I did enjoy one sport in particular, and that was badminton. After high school, I quit for a few years, but then I realized there were places still to play, and I became a competitive player. And until recently, I played. It just started to get too hard on my body, and it's difficult to ramp yourself down from being a competitive player to a recreational player, so I just decided to stop doing that. Obviously, I enjoyed badminton, and after high school, a couple years after, I was actually coached badminton at Memorial Composite for 4 years. And was lucky to have very, very good athletes just happen to flow through there. If you know Chris Wiley and Cam Wiley and those guys. So I sent a lot of players to the provincials, and I like to think it was because of me, but it was because of the athletes. Volunteering has always been a strong part. For me, it's a no-brainer. I don't really think about it or what it means. I was asked to join the Stony Plain Chamber of Commerce executive, and of course they have quite a succession plan, a 6-year plan, similar to ours here in the club, and went on to become the president of the chamber in Stony Plain. During that time, I joined the Heritage Ag Society, which runs the multi-center in Stony Plain, and there they have a succession plan as well, and became the president, and their president runs for 2 years. I'm still involved with that organization and the current treasurer. I try to refuse to be a treasurer of anything because when you're accounting, doing accounting, and people know that, they try to get you to be the treasurer, look for something else. And then the Rotary Club of Spruce Grove was formed in 1993, and I'm a charter member of the club, and eventually, again, became the president of this organization. Just a quick, to tie things back to the Ukraine. It's interesting to know that volunteering, at least to the age group, our age group, is a foreign thing there. Okay? I know Lisa recognizes it, the younger group recognizes it because of the internet and that kind of thing, and the information they're getting. But volunteering is foreign, and I think it's a big part of why the country is the way it is. I don't know which comes first. I've had, quickly wind this up here, I've had 3 classifications. Accounting services, then on to musician. While I was in that classification, I became the president of the Spruce Grove Rotary Club. So that was kind of neat to have a rock drummer as president of the Rotary Club. And I did salute the club on our outgoing meeting. And now I think, is it internet marketing is my classification. Internet marketing is difficult to explain. I have difficulty telling my mom what I do. First of all, she doesn't really understand the concept of internet in the first place. But you know, our pitch is usually that we try to help businesses grow through the use of the internet and digital marketing. So it consists of acronyms like PPC and SEO and social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. It consists of building websites, improving the websites so that when people come to them, they actually pick up the phone, send an email, and so on. We do some general consulting and analytics and email campaigns. And the people that do an email campaign locally here allow me to say, Nova Durham Clinic, if you're signed up for Nova Durham Clinic, we do that campaign and have for several years. So once a month an email comes out, and very effective, and probably the most cost-effective advertising you can do if you have a database. The second thing I'm currently involved in is a new franchise called Smart Betty. It's similar to Groupon, where we sell discount coupons online. Our unique selling proposition is that 10% of our sales go to non-for-profits, usually local non-for-profits. So when you buy one of the coupons, you can assign it that 10% to go to a local not-for-profit. My time with the Spruce Grove Rotary has been very important to me. I have to tell you, I'm very glad to be back here. I had to catch myself many times when I was with the other club saying, you know what we did in Spruce Grove? There's a reason the club is successful and solid. It's because of the history. It doesn't mean that history can't be looked at, the rules can't be looked at and changed and modified as needed. But it's a great club, and I'm glad to be back. And proud to be, again, part of this club.